working light. This is not going to be your normal type of stream. This is going to be a real quick stream that's going to turn into a YouTube video. But essentially, what this is me talking about what's going on in my country, in America. So if you don't live in America and you don't understand, that's okay. TSGE, thank you for dropping in, man. Appreciate it. How you doing today? We're going to talk about a little bit of a serious topic today, and that is the conversation around the election. Now, I don't ever want to get too political, but I'm going to use this time. I'm not going to attack or defend either side. Good, you? Well, I'm all right. All right, so let's begin with just some basics. If you are an American citizen and you are of voting age, you should be voting from the time you can begin to the time you die. That is just a fact. I need that to be expressed. This is just a fact that you should vote. If you don't vote, you have zero rights to complain. I need that to be clear enough in most people's heads. If you do not vote, you don't get to have an opinion. Now, if you are, let's say, if you are a bit older, a bit younger, then maybe you can have an opinion. You can't really do much about it. But a lot of these people are coming out for the first time, especially very famous people coming out for the first time saying that this is the first election they voted, which is terrible. It's a privilege to vote. The fact that you treat it like it's a right is ridiculous. It's a right in this country, but it's not a right worldwide. And the fact that you don't treat it like it's a privilege, you treat it like it's a right, is wrong. As someone that has an immigrant parent, I can tell you that he tells me that he's lucky he gets to vote. I don't know if they used to be able to vote back when he still lived there. He moved out long before they have their current government. So I don't know what it looked like back then in the 90s. But it's important that you vote. So please go out and vote. I cannot stress this enough. Please go out and vote. Next thing is, why are people trying to dissuade people from voting? Why? We're all allowed to have an opinion. That's what the fucking internet's for. I'm here expressing an opinion. I'm here expressing an opinion. You don't have to listen to it. That's all the news is. The news is an opinion variously based on some research. The research doesn't mean anything, but it's just an opinion. Excuse me. But yes, while some good shows, some good news networks like Al Jazeera, for example, or groups like ProPublica, who are nonpartisan groups, do their best to give a neutral ground. Politico, PolitiFact also, very neutral ground places to get your voting or any political information. If you're getting your news from places like Fox, CNN, MSNBC, these are places with pre-existing biases based on who runs a company and who they employ. While CNN tips noticeably left most of the time, or I guess for you guys, noticeably left most of the time, and Fox tends to tilt noticeably right. Those are just what those companies want. They're private corporations. They are allowed to have a political opinion. And they've expressed that political opinion many times. Forgive me. But I don't know why the other. I'm talking about common citizens. I'm not talking about government action or anything like that. Common citizens should not dissuade other citizens from voting. That's just a fact. Everybody deserves to have a voice. That is the entire point. That is the entire foundation of the United States. Is everyone has a voice. Now, next. Do not try to debate people into getting on your side unless both parties agree you can have that discussion. Because when I was in voting polls, there were these people outside the polls. But by the way, it's illegal. They didn't do anything about it. Or I guess it's like they were a certain distance away or whatever. But near the fire station, which is where we go vote, and they're handing out these pamphlets and trying to convince people to vote red. And that's wrong for several reasons. One, there's probably around there's potentially from a third to a half. I live in a red state, so it varies. But from a third to half of the people in that line are going to be voting blue. So and they know that, and you know that. So the fact that you're trying to convince people to change an opinion that you know is not going to change on a day where we're being sure their opinion is critical is shameful. Don't try and start now. If now, unlike a debate like what happens on TV, both parties agree for that to happen. Same thing with any company. Both parties have to mutually agree that this is a conversation they're going to have with each other. And if they don't, then stinky. Like, that's one thing. You can use. Next topic of, or I guess point of discussion. And this is going to make a little bit of some people upset, angry, but I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and you can shut up. But my personal view on a lot of the things here that is going on in our sociopolitical climate in this country is a complete mess. Neither person, neither red nor blue, that we have put up for these nominees, neither of them are going to do a good job. And we need to accept that. Neither of them are going to do a good job. There hasn't been a good president in the last 100 years. I'd say since JFK, there hasn't been a good president. And the reason I say that is because, politics as they went along got more and more corrupt. And that's my personal opinion. I will say my pre-existing biases up front. I am a blue. I do live in a red state, but I do genuinely align my views more with Democratic leadership than Republican or other right leadership. That is not to say I am super far to the left like people like AOC, Bernie Sanders. That is not. I'm definitely more left than the average person, but I'm not so extreme to the point where I want a different form of government. I think what we have is decent. If it's fatally flawed, but I think that the foundations of it are fine. We just need to work out the racism, homophobia, and xenophobia in the government. And that's what I think. But either option, back to what I was saying, either option is bad. At this point, you have to vote whoever aligns closest to your values. Not closer to your friends' values or closer to your parents' values. If you are of eligible age to vote, you should have your own dissonant opinion. And that's just how it should be. You should have your own completely individual, boxed off from everybody else opinion. That's just how it is. Don't be influenced by any propaganda. You should be influenced by nothing more than fact. And obviously how you feel about policy as a person. You need to pay attention to legislation. That's another big thing that no one really pays attention to. I barely pay attention to, I'm going to be completely honest, but I'm trying. It's hard to monitor that shit. Excuse me. But that's why lobbyist groups like the NRA have been so good at achieving what they want. They pay attention to legislation, and their members are present at every committee meeting about it. And so they are able to sway the government, even right-leaning Democrats, to sway the government to pulling back on gun registration laws and things like these, gun control laws. That's the word. So it's hard, and we have to accept that it's hard. But it will be challenging to monitor. But that's another thing we have to do. And another thing we have to do, in fact, that I didn't do, and I'm only just very recently educating myself on, is knowing what other names to vote for that aren't just the top ones. Because yeah, you have your White House seats, but then you also have your state. You also have your national senators for your state, and then you have other state elections and local elections, which are important because government, by its design in this country, is filter down. You start up here with your top, which is realistically your legislative branch. People put the executive branch. That's the big deal. Everybody makes a big deal out of. That's the leader of the country. They don't do as much as you think. Realistically, the Senate and the House are the top of the board, and right up there, even with them, is the executive branch. That's who you elect. You elect 2/3 of all major federal government. And you don't pay attention to the important half of that. You pay attention to one sector while letting the other important half, the one that actually passes shit, and everything else that filters down, happen. Because you didn't pay attention and you didn't vote. And the people that educated themselves and voted got what they wanted. And you didn't get what you wanted. So it is your fault if you don't educate yourself. I was barely able to educate myself on that. I voted in some local elections where I didn't know who the people were. And that's my fault. I should have done my research. And I didn't because I was lazy. And it's hard to remember. But the point is that you have to do these things. You should do these things. Not just because it's a duty. And not just because it's the right thing to do. It's because it's the privileged thing to do. You are privileged in this country to vote. Please go vote. That is all I'm asking you to do. So please go vote. I'm not here to sway anybody towards one side or the other. I don't want that to be what this discussion is about. All I want is for, if you are of legal voting age, go vote. And if you have already voted, that's fantastic. If you haven't already voted, get your ass down to the polls. That's not where my window is. Get your ass down to the polls and go vote. I don't care if you don't want to early vote. Go vote. Because you're going to be standing in those regular election day lines all damn day. And you're going to bitch about it, even though you could have gone there earlier to vote. And don't give me no excuse. You can definitely call in sick from work. You're going to anyway, just so you can have a drink at 3 p.m. in the morning. I don't want to fucking hear it. Go vote. And also, educate yourselves, both in this election if you haven't voted, and the elections coming up in another 3 years, or I guess closer to 2 years now, but in another 2 years, midterms, when the House, the entirety of the House, up for grabs again, and then again in another 2 years when a third of the Senate and half of the House and the entirety of the House is up for grabs again. You need to pay attention to these. Educate yourself. Learn who represents your values. That's what you need to figure out. Here's a step process. Learn who represents your values the closest. What other values do they represent that maybe you don't agree with? Weigh the evidence, and then go vote. That is my personal formula on how you should do this. Now, I am only 18 years old. I voted for the first time. The second early voting opened, I believe. The day it opened. Me and my parents went down to the polls. We all voted at, I believe, at 10:35, I believe, was when I cast my ballot, a.m. on last Tuesday, the 20th. So you guys can do it too. It's easy. And if you are younger, don't let this conversation dissuade you. Educate yourself still. And if your parents are saying some stupid shit, see if you can at least educate them. Do not convince them to one side or the other. That is not how you approach this. Educate them. Point out the rights and the wrongs in their argument. So they don't think that that you as a kid are not calling them stupid. That is not how you need to go about this. You need to present the information flatly with as little bias as possible. Because then what is going to be something you hear from your parents? You sound like the media. And that's not something you want to say. You want to sound like an educated person. So do yourself a favor and educate yourself, understand what you're doing, and please fucking vote. Thank you.